Well, hey, greetings. Welcome to Great Old Ones channel. Here I like to talk about role-playing games, and tonight we'll go back into talking about my favorite role-playing game, First Edition Dungeons and Dragons. And one more time, I will have Doom Swords joining me for further discussion on the greatest role-playing game there ever was and is, with First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So, you're all tuning in to watch him and not me, so I suppose without further ado, we should probably bring him out if he is ready to go.
No, they come to watch you. Thank you for the applause. I'm quite certain they come to watch you. That's the way it works, right? They come to watch you on your channel. They come to watch me on my channel, and
Well, I mean, we're not supermodels here, so I have no idea what they're doing.
Nor do I.
And we talked about more from the Players Handbook, and we'll dip a little bit into the Dungeon Master's Guide to talk about a couple of these things too, because there's some extra guidance in the Dungeon Master's Guide about some of the subjects we discussed that we'd like to talk about. So I'll do that. I need to figure out how to put this as a tiny banner on there somewhere and leave it up there permanent, if at all possible. I have no idea how to do that yet. I haven't messed around with it much, but if you like this stuff and you like to support us, I've got to buy me a coffee at present. If you'd like to help us find us another job other than our primary jobs, and I'm pretty sure that Dooms does as well, something similar. And if he sends me a link, I will go ahead and put that up there for him too. Oh, Rabbit. Oh, I too am a supermodel. Aha. Awesome. We have a supermodel tuning in to join us. Fantastic. I knew we'd be famous sooner or later and we would bring the supermodels out. So this would be excellent.
No, I didn't expect it to be so quickly. You know.
Me neither. I mean, we can blame the algorithm on that one.
Yeah.
All righty. So let's launch into some more stuff from. Let's see. I need to remove that one. Add that one, and here we go. What I probably should do is save the stuff out as a PDF so that I don't have to show Microsoft Word, because they're not paying me to advertise for them. But hey, that's okay. We will live with it. One of the things I wanted to talk about was encumbrance. A lot of people really, really hate encumbrance, but it happens to be a part of the game that I really, really love. I am not a logistics nerd or anything like that. It's one of the things that I really, really hated. Time in the military and stuff is managing encumbrance, managing my logistics, and players tend to not like it either because everybody wants to have everything they could ever possibly need right there at their disposal instantly with limitless ammo and all that stuff. And for me, resource management is the game within the game, and it all starts with encumbrance. Let's see. So, guidance from the Player's Handbook. Whatever you select to carry will have both weight and volume or bulk. Equipment for adventuring is necessary, but too much is deadly. In order to be able to move with a reasonable rapidity and freedom, the number of items carried and apparel worn must suit encumbrance restrictions. Remember that the volume of something can be as critical as its weight, i.e., 20 pounds of feathers in a sack are cumbersome. It's not all that heavy, but there's a lot to it. It's a lot of bulk. To be useful, items generally must be readily accessible, so this consideration must also be borne in mind. Oh, my potions are all in the bottom of my pack, not really readily accessible, are they? Lastly, the main purpose of adventuring is to bring back treasure. Provisions for carrying out a considerable amount of material must also be made. Yeah, you found, 300 pounds of gold coins. How are you getting them out? The table below gives you a guideline respecting weight and bulk carried and how movement is affected. So pretty much this is all the details in the Player's Handbook that you can get as far as encumbrance stuff goes. And it's not terrible guidance. Normal gear, about 35 pounds and no great bulk. Let's see, 12 movement is 12 inches. Subject can run quickly, and your reaction initiative is normal or better. With heavy gear, armor, and/or equipment of about 70 pounds or fairly bulky, um, that's 9 inches. Subject can make a lumbering run, normal reaction with no bonuses for your initiative or anything like that either. Um, Typically, this probably leans in the direction of the medium armor types more so than anything else. Although 70 pounds is quite a bit of weight that you can lug around with you. Heavy gear, armor, and or equipment of 105 pounds and bulky, such as plate armor, 6 inches of movement. That's per basically your per turn movement, right? Right. Subject can trot for short distances. You are slowed with reactions and initiatives. It takes a little bit to move. And if you are encumbered, armor and or equipment over 105 pounds weight and or very bulky. So 3 to 4 inches of movement, no trotting possible, and you are greatly slowed. Um, let's see, strength penalties or bonuses will modify these guidelines. Weight is usually stated in gold pieces, 10 gold pieces equaling 1 pound. That has nothing to do with how heavy a gold coin is. That is as much the bulk for carrying them as well as the actual weight of them. Volume can only be calculated from known comparisons as the size and shape of objects varies from individual to individual. And in fact, how big is a tapestry? Yeah, it's going to be fairly large, fairly heavy, dragging somebody's wall hangings out of the dungeon as a prize. So here it lays out for the player what they can expect if they want to load themselves down with gear.
Yeah, and I'll just say two things without using at least some sort of baseline for encumbrance. Like
Sure.
you said, with the resource management, you take away what you end up taking away is the entire challenge of XP for gold, right? So
Yeah.
if XP for gold can be gathered at an unlimited rate with which not using encumbrance, you can hand wave it and say, okay, well,
Hmm.
eventually you guys make your way back and grab the sacks and come back and all that. And it makes for a much less interesting game and sort of breaks the concept of XP for gold because XP for gold is the idea that the XP gained has been done through some manner of difficulty, right? And there's no manner of difficulty if at least
Sure.
encumbrance hasn't been given sort of a detailed thought. The other thing, yeah, to keep in mind, which is stated in the bottom paragraph, is that your strength is going to modify this. Um, and then it's sort of a kind of a nebulous idea, at least in the player's handbook, how encumbrance works and that kind of thing, and it's left more open to DM adjudication than the DMG ends up eventually introducing. Um, but it's a good start.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just like you said. This is your baseline. This is an idea where you can start with, and what you
Right,
can
right.
expect. And again, your strength. The stronger you are, the more stuff you can carry, and the more stuff you can carry, the easier you can move, and more of the loot you're going to be able to carry out of the dungeon. A good part of an old school game is how am I going to get all this stuff out of the dungeon and back to town. Right, we got to decide.
Right.
Well, there's only so much we can carry. What do we carry? How much do we got to leave? Is it going to be there when we come back? Lots of
Yeah, and it's
considerations.
not
Yeah.
just a matter of whether or not you have the capacity to carry it in sacks and whatnot or carts or whatever.
Hmm.
It's a matter of how much it weighs and how many trips it might take you and um, that kind of thing.
Hmm. And the report of an open available treasure seems to spread fast.
Right, as I would imagine.
Bring John Collins here says bring porters. Yes. Well, to a certain degree, we already did talk about bringing porters a little while back. We talked about um, henchmen and hirelings. This is what you do. You hire people to come with you to help you carry a lot of the loot and stuff out. So that's going to cost you a little bit of that money is to pay them to carry it. So I'm a big fan of logistics, big fan of you keeping track of things like your arrows, spell components. I love the idea of spell components and stuff like this because then you could base whole adventures around tracking down rare pieces of equipment or rare components for your spells and stuff like that. There's good game stuff in it as well as just being annoying to the players.
Yeah, yeah, and as I've said before, when I create a character, whenever I'm playing or whatever, part of the enjoyment, because you start out with beginning money based on class and stuff like that, but part of the enjoyment for me, and I might
Mhm.
be a little different. I know I'm different than a lot of other people, but part of the enjoyment for me in visualizing out what my guy is about or what my character is about is actually going and buying those pieces of equipment, calculating the weight of them, making sure I'm under allowances that are appropriate to the way that I want to fight and move, and then figuring out where I'm going to put all of those things. So, there's been plenty of games out there that have inventory slots and take things to more of an extreme. But a big part of character creation to me is buying the equipment, even if I have unlimited gold, buying the equipment and figuring out where to stash it because it gives me sort of a holistic view of how I'm going to end up playing this guy uh, when things go sideways.
I like that as well. It needs to be layered in for new players and or casual players, but it's definitely part of the game. Yeah, Dungeon Master D going in there. Bag of holding is definitely a coveted item in this case, right?
Right,
Ten-
right. Much
Tensor
more
floating
than
disk.
if encumbrance weren't an issue.
Yeah, why? Who needs it, right? Tensor's floating disk as well, right? You got some
Yes.
way of transporting that stuff. Let's see.
Hey, what's up, guys? Looks like it's just me. How's everyone doing anyway? Good? Bad? Are you ready for some metal? Are you ready for some metal? Oh, yeah. The bag of devouring is good, especially if you can sneak up and stick it over someone's head. I mean, although most people nowadays act like a bag of devouring has been put over their brain. I'm sure George will be back in a moment. Thanks, Dr. John Smith. 9. I assume you're actually Dr. John Smith 1, but the name was taken, so you had to end up being number 9. But well met, Doc. As always. Yeah, he might have fallen into a portable hole. That would be bad. Now, if he had fallen into a portable hole while holding a bag of holding, then we would have had real problems. Maybe that happened and we're all just in the afterlife, not realizing that the universe has been destroyed. So, what you guys been up to? chat. George took all the treasure. You guys having a good life and everything? Happy? Playing games? Oh yeah, Shalimar. Yes. Yeah. He's saving against falling damage as he makes his way down the wall because he's lost his grip. It happens to us all. Time stop is a good spell. I mean, we need what? I can't remember off the top of my head, but we need a 16th level wizard to cast that. I think perhaps. Maybe it's 15th. Oh, it's time
Hey,
stop
I think
9th?
I'm back.
I wanted to say it was 8th.
I have no
All
idea
right.
what happened. All of a sudden, my Chrome shot up to a couple of gigs of usage, and everything locked up on me. All right.
Yeah. I heard it breaking up a little bit in audio, but I thought it might have just been on my end.
Oh no, yeah.
You said that's not
Better too,
happening
that it
anymore.
froze on me. So, no idea what it's happening. Now I gotta. Oh, well, now we gotta find that darn time machine and start all over again here.
Yeah. Well, that happened to me 2 weeks in a row because I had too many windows open and all of this kind of stuff. And then people on the live stream, the Wednesday live stream, the table talk stuff, they had audio issues, and I had to just bounce out and recreate the whole thing, and it was unfortunate. So don't feel bad. I've been entertaining your wonderfully beautiful audience, George.
All righty, how do I set this up? It's got me open to multiple pages here. How do I set that? There we go. Now we're over to one page. Perfect. Then I also wanted to. So, all right. So we talked about encumbrance. Let's see. First edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons AD&D time stop is 9th level wizard spell that freezes time for 1d3 rounds of apparent time. Yes.
Yeah, so you're going to need to be 18th level for that.
Yeah.
With at least what, an 18, or you might. Do you have to have a 19? Well, that's a matter.
You
for
have to have an 18
later.
intelligence to be able to cast 9th level spells. Yes.
Right. So 18 will do it.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. So we talked a little bit about encumbrance. Let's go and kick around with how that affects movement. We talked about what your encumbrance did to your movement at where it set it. And here's the relevant passage out of the Player's Handbook on movement and what it does. Movement rate is always shown by numeral followed by the sign for inches, thus 9 inches, right? With the little inches mark. That is not 9 inches of movement as far as, little tiny baby steps. That is inches relates 1 inch is 10 feet in the game. So that's where that comes to. Number of inches is scaled to circumstances and time by modifying either the distance represented or the time period or both. Right, because we'll get to it here in a minute, but movement outdoors, right? Movement in the dungeon, movement distances, the dungeon is 1 inch to over 10 foot to over a turn of 10 minutes duration while exploration and mapping are in progress. So while that seems a little slow, you're looking around, you're drawing your maps and stuff. That's why it's set at that rate. Yeah. You could argue that if you were actually hustling to get out of the way or moving at a quicker rate to cover more distance, you could conceivably move a little faster than um, your 1 inch equals 10 foot. Your distance traveled in one round would be 6 inches is 60 feet, and per segment. Remember, our segments is how we break down things in combat. So 6 seconds. So this matters for maneuvering around on the battlefield during the combat round and stuff, where that would come into play. How far you could move, how you could close, um, jockeying for position out there on the battlefield. All that plays into it. The major difference in outdoor
Yeah.
movement is distance and time. Oh, go ahead. If you want to talk a little bit more about movement in the
Sorry.
dungeon. No.
And sorry for belatedly interrupting. This is a point, and it's one of those. I mean, I say it, but it's not really true, right? Well, it kind of is. But this is one of those hills that I tend to die on, at least with regard to my own games, because I'm adaptable to anyone else's games.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that early enough in the Player's Handbook, before the entire idea of AD&D had sort of congealed into something that could be considered a rule set, um, that segments are called out. This is one of the few times in the PHB that segments are called out, and then one of the few times anywhere in AD&D that segments are called out specific to movement, right? So this is why I typically always consider segmented movement, because if the only purpose of segmented movement is in surprise scenarios where you get a number of segments to
Mm-hmm.
act where the other group is flat-footed, and I find it strange that it would be called out here, since some of that segments and all that stuff is later detailed in the DMG, and this is all about sort of the divisible by 3 and by 10 rule, right? So the movement rate 6 in
Yep.
a segment, you can move 6 feet, 9 9 feet, 12 12 feet, 15 15 feet, 18 18 feet. And this is where, for me, and later D&D, with the conversion from 3-foot squares to 5-foot squares, kind of breaks that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I'm using strict segmented movement, which I tend to do, I have to have 3-foot squares. I mean, technically they would be 3 1/3, because they would be 3 to 10 feet, but I don't mind dropping off that other third. But otherwise, you look at the segment and you say, okay, cool, I can move 9 feet in
Mm-hmm.
a segment. Well, if my squares are 10 feet, does that mean I get to round up and move 2 squares? If I can move 6 feet, does that mean I'm limited to 1 square because they're 5-foot squares? So that's just my little soapbox on why
Yep.
I think movement rates were divisible by 3, or retconned into being divisible by 3 in terms of the AD&D game. So just something for people to think about when they're deciding on their grid scale.
Sure. Yeah, and if you recall back to earlier war games, you couldn't play it without a tape measure or a ruler in your pocket, because there were no.
Right,
You
right,
laid
and that's
everything
where
out
the
on the
edge comes
table. You
from,
were
right?
you were measuring everything with a ruler. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd be on a piece of plywood or whatever, and you'd actually use the ruler or some
Yeah.
sort of yardstick or measuring stick or whatever.
So how do you
I'm
convert
glad they
from
didn't go
those ideas?
meters, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah, movement in the outdoors, major difference in outdoor movement is distance and time. Each 1 inch equals the number of miles a character or creature can travel in 1/2 day's trekking. Terrain will vary the movement rate. When an encounter occurs, the movement rate is handled in the same manner as combat movement in the dungeon. All right, so you're trucking along, fast travel across the countryside, but when you end up in an encounter, then you switch back down to you drill down into the lower scale for your movement. Movement in cities, when your party is in an inhabited area, movement turns are the same rate as when combat in a dungeon takes place. 6 inches equals 60 foot, and each move is 1 minute long. This assumes that no map is being made. If you're mapping the city or whatever, it takes 10 times as long. So movement when mapping is the same as in a dungeon. Yeah, if you're just trucking
yeah,
along
and
through
it's
the city street.
probably yeah,
Mhm.
and it's probably true at least in the city that you can leave a guy to map and not be stuck with him because he probably has a little more safety, right? So that's something that a thief could go around and do after the fact or something
Mhm.
like that. Whereas in a dungeon, you have to stick with the mapper unless you want the mapper dead.
Right. Let's see. No note. I love this note. No mapping is possible when a party is moving at fast speed, such as when pursued or pursuing. Light must be available to make or read a map. Infravision is not suitable in such circumstances. Marks, dropped objects, or a trailing string or line are typically useless devices in a dungeon, as they will be obliterated, moved, or destroyed by passing creatures. Now, I know a lot of players that's what they like to do. They like to bring strings in there. They like to put chalk marks on the wall and stuff like this as they're moving through, which is one of the reasons why one of my favorite monsters ever is always going to be the gelatinous cube. As it squeezes down the passage, it erases all of your marks off the wall. Fantastic. All right. Let's see, what do we got here? I guess you're having a discussion with something. Yeah. First time we got real gridded
Yeah,
combat
it
was
was with
in 3 and 5. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Where they tried their best to actually boil down what a gridded combat should actually play out and look like, as opposed to um, this edition, which was more of a kind of like a workaround.
Yeah,
Translate.
and 2E did nothing to fix it. And that's a problem I have with 2E, but this isn't about 2E sucks there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this is a good point, right? If you're running around in a dungeon or whatever, I mean, think of it as being at the table, right? If you're at the table and the party runs, and you're not going to be able to ask the DM, "Hey, okay, so which way does this go?" and stop the action to actually draw out on the graph paper
Yeah.
where the map leads. You
Nobody
might be
huck.
able to say, "Okay, we're headed this way." We make a right, and then you can mark a little thing on the graph paper that says you made a right, you made a left,
Mhm.
and that's a sort of a line mapping thing that kind of works, but it doesn't capture any details.
And here, I love this picture where the
Yeah, yeah,
troll is using your line to track you down.
yeah, yeah,
That's great.
and he's rolling it up as he goes. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that.
I could see this sort of thing happening, right? Yeah.
Right, and it should happen more often.
Oh, yeah. So I will pop this one up where we've got talk about light is another thing that I wanted to bring up too, and how how the original game here dealt with light sources and stuff like that. Infravision, the ability to see radiation in the infrared spectrum, is an ability possessed by most of the creatures dwelling below ground and nocturnal animals. Some characters have this ability due to race or by magical means. However, as many characters can only see in light, which is normal to the human visual spectrum, and mapping requires light also. Some form of light generating device is necessary for activities in dungeons or at night. Being able to see heat sources doesn't do you a whole lot of good when everything is the same temperature. Yeah. Table below gives
Right.
properties of the usual light sources. In first edition Dungeons and Dragons, swords had light; they shone in the darkness. Um, More so, I mean, people would their perspectives were altered a little bit watching the Hobbit movie when he pulled out Sting and it glowed a little bit in the presence of orcs. That's that same sort of thing, that same idea that came out too. But this would be better illumination than actual just a little glow. You can actually see by it. So they
Right.
defined some standards like your torch of a 40-foot radius of illumination, how long it burned for, a lantern or a bullseye lantern, right? Let's see, the bullseye lantern was something that where you could cover open and had a lens which you could shine as a directional kind of thing.
Right. It gives you more of a what more of the potential of a coherent light that points in a direction rather
Right.
than an incoherent light that spreads. And you're not going to get that with a sword. You can point your sting straight forward to somebody, but the light's still going to cast out from all directions in
Yep.
an area of effect, right?
Yeah. So our magic daggers are 10-foot radius of illumination, so not very much. Not very much. You can see a little bit around you. Your magic short sword was 15 foot in duration, and your magic long sword was 20 foot. One thing we may want to make note of light sources and stuff, even though it's not really detailed in the player's handbook, is how far you can see is totally irrelevant when something can see your light source coming. Yeah. Whatever it is that you're moving around in the dungeon, they can see you coming around the corner because they can see the light casting shadows and stuff like this, or they can see it down the end of the tunnel that may exceed your radius of the light. Something's down on the end of it and you can't see it. Oh, I've got infravision. Well, infravision, and there's a detail to that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, is spoiled by a light source.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning something about that. So, kind of to me, the way I think about it, there's different ways that I think about it. But if I'm in the dark, okay, even if it's infravision or whatever, I have some
Mhm.
sort of special abilities with regard to vision. If I'm in the dark, I am going to see a light source from far away, line of sight, generally speaking. Now, if I happen to be within that light source
Mhm.
and I'm looking upon something in the dark, it's not until my light source reaches that individual in the dark that I even have a chance to see him. Think about driving down the highway with your lights on and whatnot. Maybe your dome light on is in your vehicle or something.
Mhm.
There's some individual walking around or something with no light source at all. He's going to see me well before I see him. And I think that's something a lot of DMs neglect to
Mm.
take into account,
Right.
right? A monster that has no light source is going to see your party coming from a mile away,
Right.
at least insofar as the passageways allow that line of sight.
Yeah. Great point there when it comes to running games. And I like how this book describes what infravision was. And the description here reminds me of some very early um, night vision goggles and stuff like this, where everything is it's basically grayscale. Let's see. The heat radiation becomes visible, and differences in temperature allow infrared sight. Warm things are bright, cool things gray, very cool things are black. Most infravision extends 60-foot distance. Dungeon dwelling monsters have infravision to 120 foot. So you might have infravision, but theirs is better.
Right.
Yeah. All infravision is spoiled if a light source is shedding illumination upon the creature possessing the infrared sight capability. Similarly, great heat will spoil the capability. So yeah, let's set things on fire. Yeah, it's going to overpower any weaker heat sources nearby. Now, here's the thing: thieves hiding in shadows are successful with respect to infravision only if there is a heat light source nearby to mask their body heat, or a very cold object or radiation to provide similar cover. So
No, you're
hiding in
right, right.
shadows does you no good if your opponent can see heat sources without some sort of way of
Yeah,
masking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of beside the point, but or smell you or somehow sense, your movement.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
an interesting anecdote that I found a few years ago, I think it was Ernie Gygax who said it, is that Gary's infravision idea and the spoilage of that came from the movie Westworld.
Ah,
And it was gunfighter sight, I think is what they called it. And anybody can look it up on YouTube. Just look for Westworld gunfighter sight, and that's what supposedly, according to his son, inspired infravision and the spoilage of it. Because I think at one point the opponent moves behind like a standing sconce of torches or whatever, and then the gunfighter can't see him, but as soon as he
right.
comes
Okay.
around,
Yeah.
he can see him again. Yeah, it's a cool little clip to watch to get an idea of what Gary envisioned this to be.
Nice. Cool. Not Gamma World. Westworld is a pretty darn good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, we all haven't seen it in an eternity, but
I can't remember. It's been so long. Then when they came out with Future World, which is a total bomb. Yeah.
right, right.
Okay.
I think it
Ultravision.
had a Marvel comic though.
Oh yeah. Ultravision. Exceedingly rare. It's not something that's so off the top of my head. There's not that much that has it. There's not that much that gives you those capability either. There's the capability to see radiation in the ultraviolet spectrum, gamma rays, X rays, etc. Creatures with this ability can see in normal nighttime darkness. That is, they see at night as well as a human can see at dusk because of the continual bombardment of ultraviolet radiation upon the Earth. So this is an outdoor thing where you kind of see fairly normal out of doors, but it doesn't work underground because ultraviolet does not penetrate underground. They also do make
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got something to say about that too, because when I was working on, and I'm sorry, but when I was working on
No.
a monster manual database, I realized, at least in the original monster manual, there are only two creatures in the entire thing, across the three core books, that have any sort of ultravision whatsoever specified, and that's the Bone Devil and the Ice Devil. Now, the DMG talks more about what ultravision is supposed to be, and the Player's Handbook, I think, handles it succinctly.
Mhm.
Um, but, but I think it's a real afterthought. I think that ultravision is a brilliant idea. Okay, because it's not so much different from our real world and creatures being able to kind of see in the dark, but this gives bombardment of ultraviolet light upon the earth, um, as the justification for these creatures being able to sort of see in the dark and see in twilight and
Mhm.
and early morning light and stuff like that. And it's a real shame that the monster manual has two devils that aren't even of the prime material plane where
Where
these
you would have
ultraviolet
ultraviolet
bombardments
light.
could even happen, right? That couldn't even happen unless that
Yeah.
happens in the outer planes. So I think many more creatures, ultravision is a good way. If you supplant dark vision with ultravision and build it into your world as, hey, we've got the two moons and we've got the sun, saying Greyhawk and whatnot,
Yeah.
you can open up some really interesting possibilities. And I feel like it was just half finished, and then 2E came along and just nixed that out of the equation, which is a real shame. because ultravision is one of those weird things that leads into pulp type of fiction and the works of appendix N writers. It's one of those weird things, I forget what they call them in OSR now, right? It's kind of a gonzo thing that you can fit into your world and give it to a lot more creatures than an ice devil and a bone devil that reside in the Nine
Well,
Hells, right?
yeah. Um, Further editions created something called True Sight, which was,
Right,
I guess, a
right.
replacement for that, and they gave it to a lot more creatures. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But then the dark vision, as described in the newer editions, dark vision sounds a lot like ultravision and kind of
yes, it
blending
does.
a bit of infravision in with it. Yeah,
Right, right. It gives. I mean, it's the one rule in AD&D that gives creatures who can see in the dark a reasonable explanation for why they can see in the dark, as well as a human can see during the day, right? And
hmm
it's underutilized, and it's unfortunate that it's remained that way.
yeah. And this John Collins here makes a good point. Yeah, the devils that the paladin was fighting in the picture in the player's handbook, those are bone devils. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we got the Bone Devil. We got I think the Ice Devil is the one laying on the ground, embedded with stalagmites. You
yeah.
know, ultravision should have been more used. Maybe the term ultravision is what sort of stopped it from being used more because it sounded so esoteric. But
Hmm. And they also on this page mention a little bit more about movement. Silent movement. Characters typically make a certain amount of noise and thus alert opponents of their presence. But thieves, oh, we can't have thieves anymore. We got to call them rogues now, right? Thieves, as well as characters able to move quietly because of a magical device such as boots of elvenkind, have a chance to be absolutely silent when moving. This chance to be absolutely silent is given as a percentage, plus or minus modifiers, and the character must roll percentile dice to score less than or equal to the percentage chance he or she has to move without a sound. Success indicates silent movement and an improved chance to surprise an opponent or slip past it. Yeah. So silent movement, something it isn't just naturally. People make some noise and stuff moving around because they're really not trained to move quietly like the thief is.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Invisible movement. By various magical means, it is possible to become invisible and move about. Invisibility bestowed by a cloak of elvenkind extends to what it covers. That's just the character that's wearing it, right? A ring or a spell of invisibility offers superior invisibility. Note that none mask light, so the invisible character cannot move about with a light source and be unseen, for the light will be noticed even though its bearer and possibly its source are not. Yeah. I could just picture that, right?
correct.
You know, there's a little
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
like the
little
Invisible
arc of
Man.
light on the floor, but nothing seems to be creating it. Where's that coming from? Yeah.
Yeah, and something to mention that might come along later is that boots of elvenkind, they might make you silent, right? But it's kind of like invisible movement. If I ever got a cloak of invisibility and I hold out a light, that light's not going to become invisible all of a sudden because I've got a cloak of invisibility. But the same thing goes for boots of elvenkind. They don't magically make your armor silent, right? So
No.
the
Right.
concept of right, I'm not going to put on boots of elvenkind. It's all about the footfalls, and there's supporting information on that which we can get into at some point. But none of these are sort of really supposed to be a silver bullet for the conquering and accomplishing all circumstances within the game.
Mm-hmm. It's just some guidance on how to handle all that stuff is definitely in the Dungeon Master's Guide. This just gives some highlights to the players as to what the dungeon master is probably going to be seeing, thinking, or seeing when you're trying these sorts of things. That it should be taken a lot of this stuff into account. That invisibility isn't magical, unseen,
Right.
unheard, unfelt. Yeah. We discussed a little bit of combat, but part of the combat, we'll get back to it a little bit here, would be the turning of the undead, right? So a lot of stuff can happen. The broad heading covers all forms of attack and fighting. It includes clerical, turning undead, magical control, spell attacks, breath and gaze weapons attacks, magical device attacks, missile discharge, and melee hand-to-hand combat. So there's a lot more to it, right? We talked a little bit about it when we talked about the combat when we were doing the addict document, but we didn't talk anything about. We talked about spell timing, but we didn't say anything about turning undead.
Right.
Clerics are empowered with the ability to turn away undead creatures, as well as certain lesser demons, devils, godlings, and paladins. Through their power of their profession and holy, unholy symbols. The cleric's level of experience dictates the level of success he or she can expect to achieve in this action. As the level of experience increases, the cleric is actually able to destroy undead by the power of his or her religion, or in the case of evil clerics, destroy or command to service such undead if they are of the same alignment as the cleric, or neutral as skeletons or zombies. I do believe modern editions have changed them from being neutral to being chaotic evil. But anyway, success also depends on opportunity, of course. The cleric must be in a position to step before the undead, and he or she must have time to speak and hold forth the religious symbol in order to turn or command undead. And this course, of course, precludes other spell activity. Right. So, I'm going to turn to undead. Well, they can't see you. They don't know where you're at. How can they see your holy symbol held before you if you're hiding? So you don't have anything else on that page about it? Oh, we had damage. And you made a note, so we'll go ahead and look at the pull up what you wanted to bring up here. So image file. Here is the turning table. All right. Matrix
right.
for clerics affecting undead et al. Right. And you wanted to point out the little tiny A, B, C, D, and E, and then the special under F. Right. For these is just a table of undead here, right? And well, didn't the paragraph mention turning, demons and devils and other powerful beings as well as paladin? Boom, not
Yeah,
on there.
yeah, as
What?
well as paladin.
Right. What's
Yeah,
listed
and
here is
I
paladin.
unfortunately
Go ahead.
underlined the cross. That underline's not supposed to be there. But
Well,
it's
it's a
more
good
about
point
the
though. The
underline being
paladins,
under special. Right.
yeah,
They do.
right. Yeah, paladins turn undead as a cleric 2 levels below their level. That's useful information for them to have, right? To know that they
Right.
can also do it as well. That's part of it, right? But what you were highlighting was this part,
Right.
right? Number affected, the star number affected 7 to 12 rather than 1 to 12. The higher in power you are, you can turn more of them automatically. 6 of them at a minimum are going away, and then you add from 1 to 6 more on top of that.
Right. Right. So you
Yeah.
might get a 1d6 plus 6, which is going to give you a 7 minimum, where you get that
Mhm.
asterisk on there. And
The
that's a
one
huge boon.
one of the pieces I didn't really like it a whole lot was your 1 to 12. You could have a crappy die roll and only one zombie's
Right.
leaving the fight.
Well, role play better and advance your cleric. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Evil creatures from lower planes, such as minor demons, devils, lesser devils, and mesodemons, night hags, and from 1 to 2 in number. So not very many of them. Right. As a rule of thumb,
Right.
any creature with an armor class of -5 or better, 11 or more hit dice, or 66% or greater magic resistance will be unaffected. So these are things to keep a track of too. Just because it says you can turn these things, you need to the dungeon master needs to take a quick look at its capabilities to determine that if it can be, regardless of the cleric's ability. Right, there's
Yeah,
your
but
A, B.
you know,
Mhm.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Say a -4. Say you've got a guy with -4, 50% magic resistance, and 10 head dice. Even having the opportunity for a cleric to turn that really shows you how powerful turn undead is, because that guy comes along with a bevy of other special abilities and things he can do, including gating in other lower plane or outer plane creatures. Um, but I love I love how Gary put the sixes in there, just a prickle at the evangelists or whatever of the time. You know, he always liked to use those sixes when it was related to something, you know,
Mm.
that could be misinterpreted.
So we'll go back to it, right? Mummy A. So at a minimum, a 4th level cleric is going to be required, right, to turn a 1st or 2nd level paladin. So
Right,
even though it's a
right.
paladin would be technically a lower hit die monster, like on the equivalent of a skeleton or a zombie, the nature of the power he gets from his god and all that kind of stuff makes him just much more difficult for you to be able to turn him away. I think it's really
Yeah, and
interesting
you can
thing.
do it on a natural 20 or whatever, right? So imagine you run into a room, and that's why I find this to be particularly interesting. Imagine you run into a room, your paladin's your stalwart guy who's always up front, unrelenting in the conviction of his god, un uh, unaffected by things that would shrivel
Mhm.
normal men and cause them to flee in panic. And then a 4th level cleric comes out and turns your guy. That's a sort of an expression of that changes the entire dynamic of combat.
Yep,
This guy just came out, and our paladin flew and fleed in fear
running
or
off.
whatever.
Hey, what?
uh yeah, what does the rest of the group do in that situation? you know
Oh crap! Yeah,
yeah, big time.
yep. And so it lists them here. And we looked at that table. The equivalents, the monster that they were the equivalent to, a mummy, a specter, a vampire, ghost, a lich. These are fairly
Right.
powerful undead, right? And the equivalent level of paladin to match up for that type of undead. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked
Evil clerk.
like at the extreme end of the scale that, what was it, a 14th level cleric needs a 10 or higher. Yeah, 14th level cleric needs a 10 or higher to turn a 10th or 11th level paladin. Now, fortunately, they don't destroy paladins, but there's automatic turns. So a 14th level
Mhm.
cleric automatically turns a 1st or 2nd level paladin,
Yeah.
which is
Be
pretty
gone.
cool.
Yeah. But then again, a first or
Yeah.
second level paladin should probably not be seeking out 14th level clerics to fight. Just saying.
No, no.
And then not
And
a good idea.
everybody should be terrified. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But he's just a smart enough one to leave. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Evil creatures cause the creatures to take neutral or friendly attitude according to a reaction dice score. Neutral undead will ignore the cleric and his or her party. Friendly ones will follow the cleric and join the adventure. Right. So if you're running with an evil cleric and hey, look, I can get some more allies here to come help us out, kind of thing, which would be a way to approach it. Right. Um, Good clerics cause the creature to move directly away from his or her person and stay as far away as possible for not less than 3 nor more than. Let me go grab the other page. 12 rounds, moving at full speed for the duration, if at all possible. The turned undead will be
12
able to come back
rounds.
again, but they are subject to further turning by the cleric. So just, when it wears off, when he comes back, you can turn them again. Right. So some of that wasn't really clear. Well, how many times can I do this? Can I do this over and over again on the same undead? How does that kind of stuff work? Yeah. Right. Progression of the table is not even. A variable increment of 5% appears, 19, 20. It is included to reflect two things. First, it appears to allow lower level clerics a chance to turn some of the tougher monsters. It disappears at fourth level and reappears again only when the clerics have reached a high level, eighth, and this reflects the relative difficulty of these clerics when faced with turning away even the worst of evil creatures, but also allows the table to have them completely destroy the weaker undead. If for some reason you must have an exact progression, follow the columns for levels 1, 2, and 3, correcting to the right from there, and thus rather severely penalizing the clerics of upper levels, but by no means harming play balance. Here he is right in here. If you want to adjust it, go ahead and adjust it. Right? Column 4 will then read from top to bottom T4, 7, how it's described. Do not otherwise alter the table, as it could prove to be a serious factor in balance, weakening or strengthening clerics too greatly. You know. So here we go. Turning of Undead. Excellent stuff that we had on there.
Yeah, and I mean, we may have just like glazed over it, particularly talking with the paladin. But same thing goes for the special column goes for demons and devils and stuff like that. So a lot of people don't, and I might have said it and forgotten, but a lot of people don't realize that the cleric is capable of turning. You can almost look at it as some sort of exorcism from the good cleric's view, capable of turning, a lot of stuff. So turn undead is kind of a misnomer because you might turn creatures of the outer planes who aren't undead at all, or you
Right.
might turn paladins who aren't undead at all and are spiritual, soul-filled beings. So
That would probably be a
there's
good
a
way of describing it right there.
right.
Yeah. Although good clerics can't turn paladins, because that's not what they do. You know,
What
now,
about the
evil,
anti-paladin?
the anti-paladin, well, that came along a little bit later. We're going to talk about, we're just covering the
Yeah.
first three original books here. We're not going to worry about all this invented stuff that came up a little bit later. Yeah. Your anti-paladin is, there's monsters out there that are of an equivalent of an anti-paladin type. So you don't necessarily have to go in and
Right.
add that into it. Yeah.
Yes.
I got to remove that one and we'll bring that one back. All righty. Damage was something that I wanted to cover in here a little bit too. Damage is meted out in hit points. We talked about hit points a little bit. I do have a good video about hit points, why actually it's not a bad idea. Right. If any creature reaches 0 or negative hit points, it is dead. Certain magical means it will prevent actual death, particularly a ring of regeneration. Right. Check out the monster manual Troll. Right. This is to be noted there that damage was um, originally when you reached 0, you were dead because that was the way it was in the original game and stuff. Now that has been added in, and I did make a copy of that page. I think it's a little further in here. Yeah, from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Here we'll jump into Dungeon Master's Guide real quick. 0 hit points. They do talk about 0 hit points and maybe how you as a game master can adjust that instead of just being straight 0 means dead to something a little bit more. So what we got here? When any creature is brought to 0 hit points, optionally as low as -3 hit points, if from the same blow which brought it to a total of 0, it is unconscious. In each of the next succeeding rounds, one additional negative point will be lost until -10 is reached and the creature dies. So instead of dying at 0, you die at -10 here. Such loss and death are caused from bleeding, shock, convulsions, non-respiration, and similar causes. It ceases immediately on any round a friendly creature administers aid to the unconscious one. So all you got to do is come up and render some aid to them. You basically stabilize them and prevent them from further dying. Right. Aid consists of binding wounds, starting respiration, administering a drop, spirits, healing potion, etc., or otherwise doing whatever is necessary to restore life. Any character brought to 0 or fewer hit points and then revived will remain in a coma for 1 to 6 turns. You're not hopping right. You got knocked to 0. You're not jumping right back up and resuming the fight just because I gave you a healing potion, right? And I think, yeah, that's one of the things I think the newer versions have made cheap, right? The fact that you've just been knocked unconscious and you jump up like nothing happened. Yeah. Thereafter, he or she must rest for a full week minimum, right? You got to recover all of that stuff. You've been put to near death and you're not going to jump up and run around like nothing happened. He or she will be incapable of any activity other than necessary to move slowly to a place of rest and eat and sleep when there. Character cannot attack, defend, cast spells, use magic devices, carry burdens, run, study, research, or do anything else. Right? The trouble here is how do we get you safely back out of the dungeon so you can convalesce? Right. This is true
Right.
even if cure spells and/or healing potions are given to him or her. Although if a heal spell is bestowed, the prohibition no longer applies. But then again, the heal spell is a very powerful cleric spell. There's a lot of
Yeah,
magic
what
that's involved in
sixth level, sixth level, I think. So
right.
you're looking at what, a 12th level caster. Yeah, and what, 10,000 gold pieces if you don't happen to have a 12th level caster in your group.
Right. And the problem is casting of that spell saps the cleric that's casting it as well.
Right.
Right. If any creature reaches a state of -6 or greater negative hit points before being revived, this could indicate scarring or the loss of some member, if you so choose. So for the dungeon master, again, this came out of the dungeon master. For example, a character struck by fireball and then treated when at -9 might have a horrible scar tissue on exposed areas of flesh, hand, arms, necks, or face. I mean, this is making some recommendations in there that can be used for role playing.
Right, right. And something to say. I want to say something about a couple of these things, and I'll try to be brief. Is that there are options in the DMG for how you handle 0 hit points or less. They take a little reading to
Mhm.
sort of dig through the density of it or whatever, and then 2E continued on with that tradition, and so did 3 and 3.5. It just took some of those options away. So I think everybody's pretty familiar with the concept of bleeding out, dying, losing hit points per round until stabilized and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But it came from 1E, and there's some options with how to handle it. And you could do a simple, hey, if the guy hits 0 or less, he can bleed out until he's -10, and then he's dead. This is one of the areas in which 1E tends to make the game a little more dangerous by providing some variability of things that happen under different circumstances. And that's something that I really like. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Gary was totally against called shots and stuff like that, at least in this particular rule set. Like, hey,
Right.
what fun is it if you're playing a character whose arm has been cut off or whose eye has been taken out with a dagger? But he
Yeah.
has no problem if you're totally near death and barely revived, you being horribly disconfigured for life.
Right, yeah, but
So
that's
it's
your punishment from getting down to that point, right? But then again, that's all up to the game master to
right.
decide. That's why I put the wording in there the way he did, and it again, it could
Yeah,
add some role playing element or something to it, where you were hurt.
absolutely.
So here's something that you could use to play with, and make this yours. Make now
Yep.
this is your character, run with it, kind of thing. Um, Hit points as an abstract is a way of making a compromise from detailed hit location tables and all that kind of stuff. This is just it's an abstract. It is a way of
Right.
generalizing a lot of these things for a heroic game with some. I hate to use the word elements of realism, but you got to have some things in there that people are familiar with. Otherwise, they're not really going to be immersed in the game as much. So knocking somebody unconscious, that's something everybody really has could possibly deal with on a real basis.
You're right. That's a very, very good point, actually, sir. Is that, simulation isn't necessarily the goal as much as sort of verisimilitude, even though it's overused, and being able as a player to relate to what your character is going through or has gone through.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see if Gonzalo does get a mean comment in here on us. I don't know. Right? He might be able to. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Sure, we can kind of counter to it. Yeah. Falling damage. This is something that you and I discussed a while back too, and we thought this was an important point to bring out. Right, falling into pits from ledges, down shafts, and so forth will certainly cause damage unless the fall is broken, of course. And then you've got the monk who's got the ability to slow his fall and stuff like this. Right, and your fall may just be broken by the spear trap on the bottom of the pit. Yeah. While such falls could break limbs and/or other bones, it is probable that your referee will simply use a hit points damage computation. Right here, let's just go back to the abstract. You fell in the pit. Let's not talk about okay, now your leg is broke. That's not fun.
Right. Being disfigured is fun. But
broken leg is. If you do it right, being disfigured to the point could be, it's a role playing point to it. It's not you don't.
It is. It is.
You wouldn't disfigure your players to the point where they couldn't function anymore. Yeah.
And this preempts the entire idea of combat wheelchairs. Just as an aside.
Oh, okay.
Bones don't break, man. Why the hell would you have a wheelchair?
We've got a heal spell which fixes everything. Yeah. All righty. Now, computation based on 1d6 for each 10-foot of distance fall into a maximum of 20d6. Right. So you're going to reach terminal velocity when you hit the 20. But people don't realize that is not, 200 feet. It's a little closer than that. The way I understand it, the way this is supposed to run it was 1d6 cumulative for every 10 foot. So you fell 10 foot, you took 1d6 damage. You fell 20 feet, you took 1d6 for the first 10, 2d6 for the second 10. So that would be a total of 3d6 for a 20-foot fall. That's how I understand it was supposed to work. I didn't realize that until recently here, and I'd always played it as 1d6 per 10 foot, and that was it. So if I fell 30 feet, it was only 3d6. And it seemed, given what my current profession is and understanding what critical falls and all that kind of stuff are as far as trauma criteria and things like that go, the 1d6 per 10 foot cumulative makes much, much more sense.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, even though I don't have much experience with it. But let's take an example that may be less severe than falling onto concrete or a dungeon floor, flagstone, cobblestone, something like that, or into the pit of cavernous floor or whatever, falling off of a boat. You fall off a boat 100 feet, they're coming to pick up a corpse. They're not coming to resuscitate, at least under normal circumstances.
There are very rare cases where you rolled all ones on your damage die when you hit the bottom. That's how that works, right? You are severely injured, but you're not dead. Yeah. There are also cases where you rolled all 6 on your way down and you splattered when you hit the bottom.
Yeah, and I did a little research because I knew we were going to talk about this. I did a little research, and I don't want to go into it too deep, but it was Dragon 69 in 1983 that was related to the Thief Acrobat class. It was like a little sidebar thing where Gygax actually claimed and said that, I'll just read it. He said the correct procedure for determining falling damage in the AD&D game system is to roll 1d6 per 10 feet fallen cumulative. Since a falling body accelerates quickly, the damage mounts geometrically. 2d6 for the second 10 feet fallen, 3d6 for the third 10 feet, etc. The maximum of 20d6 is therefore reached after a fall of approximately 60 feet for most characters, and then the thief could acrobat could fall additional distances. So basically, what it's the idea of the more you fall, the closer you reach terminal velocity.
Mm-hmm.
So that he considered that after 60 feet, you would take, so for the first, you would take 1d6, like you said, and then the next 10 feet, it would be 2d6 on top of that until you get to 6d6 and that, or 60 feet, and that's when you're taking 20d6, and then 70 feet, you're taking 20d6, 80 feet, you're taking 20d6, and so on and so forth, which makes it a lot more understandable because even as a kid, oh, my fighter just fell 200 feet. Okay, I took 20d6. It was 20 points, you know. I mean, there are circumstances where people have fallen from vast distances and
Yeah,
survived. But
an incredible luck,
that's not the spirit. Yeah.
No, no. Yeah, this treatment gives characters a better survival chance, although it is not as realistic as the system-determined breaks, strains, dislocations. Again, that's not part of the heroic game. Is to dwell on specific damage locations and stuff like that. That's not the way they.
Now, he already told us
Yeah,
that if
yeah,
you're the DM and you want to disfigure and cause
yeah.
internal organ damage, you're free to do so.
You're free to do so. Yeah, right. So if you want to change falls over to causing sprains and breaks and dislocations, okay, go ahead. Yeah, that's your game. Right. You're probably going to have players. Yeah.
I'm sorry, one moment. If anybody ends up wanting to check it out, something else I found that we may end up talking about at some point is Dragon Magazine number 88 from August 1984. There's a pretty excellent article, and this is something I miss about Dragon. People were not ashamed to go in and dig into things. And it's called Physics and Falling Damage, and the subtitle is "Velocity is the Key to Understanding Crash Landings." Brilliant article, beautiful. It's worth a read. It may be way more into the weeds than most people want, but that's how we used to roll.
Yeah.
Us old school guys used to dig into that stuff because we had nothing to do and we obsessed about it so much. But this person, Arn Ashley Parker, this person is one of the craziest persons that I've ever seen in in Dragon Magazine. This is a brilliant article. It's going to take some time to digest.
Oh, I'd have to go in there and look at it because as you and
It's
I
good.
discussed, I'd been on a run through Len Lakofka's articles and stuff in there, and all the drilling down into details he liked to get into.
Yeah, and this person even uses. It looks like since they're using Holger, it looks like they're using 3 Hearts and 3 Lions as the intro to their article. It's really good. It's really good and based in physics and mathematics.
Well, I'm gonna pull up this picture again because it's a fantastic picture.
It is. I love it. It's one of my favorites. I really liked, in terms of the art that was in here. And I don't know
Mhm.
really who started it, but it seemed like Trampier started kind of the idea of, and I'm not an artist, so I can't tell you what it is, but the use of kind of negative space, and then LaForce picked up after him, doing the same kind of thing because it's really interesting. This dungeon is clear and linear, perfectly crafted,
Mhm.
bricks, and all that stuff's black, and the things that you're supposed to look at are all white, you know. Um, and some of that stuff was done in there. Just an aside.
Mhm. No, it's excellent art and stuff in there, even if some of it wasn't high realism, talent, whatever you wanted to call it. With that, it was just
Right.
descriptive, right? Like all the when you're flipping through the random dungeon generation pages, all the little margin art to go through the dungeon that was included and all of that stuff that was in it. It was good art, excellent art, kind of flavor, definitely a lot of flavor.
Yeah, you remember those things? I mean, have we covered most of the material?
Yeah, I got pretty much everything I wanted to run through tonight. I think we've hit on all of it. If you got some other things we want to run through, go for it.
I was just going to talk about the art some more. You remember those things
Hmm.
when, at least when I was, I think I remember it when I was a kid. There would be something that you would buy. They would just be like black, and it would have a little piece of plastic or cellophane or whatever over it, and you would
Yep.
kind of draw along it with a pencil, and it would expose the white parts. And and that's something I really don't know how some of these guys, particularly Trampier, how some of these guys had everything black, because black is going to cost more in printing costs, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, because you're using more ink. Everything is black except the stuff you want to look at that's white. So it's kind of a transposition of what you see in art
Hmm.
nowadays, and it sort of lended a feel
Well, yeah. Well,
to the
the
artwork that
dungeon
I
is
can
dark. Come on
appreciate.
now, we got to have dark passages, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I want to say that he was the one who kind of pushed that forward, but I don't know.
No, that's definitely a lot of good, excellent flavor art and all that kind of stuff in these books to get your whet your appetite and stuff for it. Setting the stage for a lot of the adventure.
Sure, absolutely.
Uh, Artwork of D&D.
We got any questions?
I don't know if we got any questions. We got an excellent comment here. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. Artwork of D&D arguably has more influence over our imaginations than the gameplay itself. To a certain degree, I agree with a lot of that. Heck, we spent most of our time looking at the pictures in the books more than playing, I would imagine.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the words. I mean, so we obviously have the artwork and stuff, but
Hmm.
just Gary's sort of prose while describing things that are actually instructions.
Hmm.
It left me in the library for hours a day, many, many, many days. You know, um, because I found it so fascinating. It was really the complete package of artwork in the uh, physical, like the drawing sense, and then artwork in the writing sense. Sometimes the writing sense is like, okay, man, well, maybe you should have done that a little different, because that's still confusing now and could be done a little bit differently. But I mean, the guy was on point, and so were the artists. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Larry Elmore. I love Gary Gygax, and I'll take that to the grave. Yeah,
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. I mean, it got your imagination going, and then the language improvement you got out of reading his stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Not how I got into it was Dungeons and Dragons wasn't from I didn't get into reading books because of Dungeons and Dragons. I got into D&D from reading books. See if I can find some of this
Right, right.
more art here. Because I was reading The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. That was given to me by my stepmother when I was 12. And she said, "Here, you'll like these. Read these." So I started reading them, right? And then I got into Dungeons and Dragons from there. Here, let me grab another piece of art here. Like I said, the margin art sets the stage. I'll save that, and I'll show that
Yeah,
one.
I agree with D here, because I was a little younger, so yeah, I read fairy tales and kids books and all that stuff. But my first experience with fantasy literature was after I had already discovered D&D. But yeah, look at this. I mean, the artwork from a technical sense isn't the
Yeah.
greatest thing in the world, but from
From
the
telling
sense
a
of
story.
what, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see how they came around, encountered these guys at the corner, and
Yeah.
have pushed farther. You can see how the dwarf is leading. You got the elf there with the bow, but the dwarf is like, "Come on, guys!
Yeah.
What are you hanging out back there for?" And the halfling looks completely hapless. Yeah.
Like, oh, we, uh-oh. Even the smallest creatures we encounter are bigger than me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, skeleton coming out of the water. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
when the side passageways are filling up the room and the
Yeah, they
fighters
just,
like
right. Yeah,
trying to
that was
figure out, yeah.
when you're describing the adventure in the, which book was that? It was that,
I think that's DMG combat section toward pursuit and evasion, I want to say.
okay, I thought it was right there when we were talking about adventuring.
I mean, I could be
There it is. Hold on a minute.
completely wrong.
I found it. Excellent. Art that tells the story of what's going on.
Yeah, 68. And just to be clear, even if I disparage any art from old school editions, these guys smoked me and they were like 17. So
Well, yeah, right.
I can't draw this. You know, I don't care
Yep.
if the
No,
fighter's arm isn't bent at the elbow.
no,
It's
no, yeah.
badass. I don't care if his
You're going to
right
get stick
hand
people from
is
me.
this long.
Oh, yeah, and here's a good question there. Just think of how formative this image is in shaping what a party composition looks like. Exactly. You had the halfling, you had the magic user, you had the dwarf, you had the elf, right? You had the fighter up there in there fighting as well. You know, yeah,
Yeah,
how we,
yeah.
yeah.
It demonstrates the game, you know,
Hmm.
versus being just a reading exercise and imagining, because your imagination's going to be different than anyone else's, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't have a whole lot more that I wanted to talk about than what we got through, but if you've got more that you want to cover, I think we've hit on most of it. We'll have another chat and discuss what we'd like to get to further. And there's
Yeah,
plenty more in this book that we can talk about.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And, once again, if anybody wants us to talk about anything specifically, they can do that. They can leave a comment on your channel, uh, right?
Yep.
And you've turned on the community feature in
I don't
YouTube. I need to turn that on.
community feature in YouTube. I don't know that I don't even know it. I haven't even checked. It probably was a default
Yeah,
setting or
yeah,
something.
yeah. It might have been a default setting. Mine's not turned on, but that's where you can just go in and talk to your subscribers, and I think that's pretty cool. I've been meaning to turn that on mine,
Yeah.
so that if anybody has any any chat that's not related to a comment on a video, people can just talk. And
Sure.
I like that you
Throw
did
ideas.
that, and it showed me something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Give us some ideas. Throw some stuff out there. Make some. You don't have to throw it on a comment on a video or whatever. Just talking to the community. Hey, how about this? What about this subject? If you got extra
right.
questions, whatever. You guys were talking about this, but how about this part of it? We could go back in and talk about those extra little pieces and stuff as well. Right? Interaction is it's a social game. We need to have some social interaction about the social game. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. And
Well, cool.
that's what I like to do nowadays.
Yeah. Because well, a couple of years back we weren't able to do that.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Although we did.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. This is great. appreciate you coming out and
Pleasure.
hopping on all this and talking about this stuff with me. We'll do it again. So I'll cut you loose, and then we will plan out the next one.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you coming out and discussing first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons with us. We're going to definitely talk more about the first edition Dungeons and Dragons Players Handbook, as well as a lot more stuff that came in the Dungeon Master's Guide. In fact, there's a few pieces of things that came in the Monster Manual that we need to include in our discussion as well. Things such as magic resistance and stuff like that. So we'll get to all of that. Just keep tuning back in and joining us. And if you got questions, throw them out there. You got comments, things you want to see, things you want us to cover, throw it on out there. We're more than happy to talk about all that stuff, give you our opinion on it, which you can take or leave. Yeah. Again, thanks a lot for joining me tonight here on the Great Old Ones channel. I appreciate all of you checking in with us and enjoying all of this stuff with us. And tune in next time where we will do some more. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Hit that bell icon if you want notifications. Spread this around. We want to talk to as many people about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition as we can get away with. And thanks again for tuning in.